Good afternoon, and welcome to Math with Mr. D. Today, we'll be talking about adding mixed numbers with like and unlike denominators. Let's take a look at our first example. Up here on the board, you can see that I have two mixed numbers with like denominators, 2 and 4/6 and 4 and 3/6. The first thing that I'm always going to do is I'm always going to add my whole numbers. As we all know, 2 plus 4 is 6. So I write down my 6. Now I just have to add my numerators, 4 and 3. If I add 4 and 3, I do get 7. And if you remember from the previous lessons, we do not add our denominators. So we keep our denominator the same, which ends up being 6. You may be looking at this answer and you may say to yourself, I have a mixed number and the fraction is an improper fraction. How do I simplify that? Because you do have to simplify all your answers. Well, let's take a look how to do that. On the next slide, I have our answer written down, 6 and 7/6. We have to turn our mixed number into an improper fraction. I'm going to take my denominator and multiply it by my whole number. So what I'm going to do, so I don't get confused, I'm going to write a times sign, a multiplication sign, and I'm going to put a number 1 there, just so I know I have to do that first. Once I get done multiplying my denominator and whole number, I'm going to take that product and I'm going to add it to my numerator. 6 times 6 is 36, plus the 7 is 43. So my numerator is 43, and my denominator, you guessed it, it stays the same. So now I have an improper fraction. I have to turn this around again into a mixed number. Hopefully this time our mixed number fraction part is a proper fraction. Let's take a look how to do this. If you remember from the previous lessons, I take my improper fraction and I have to divide it now. And that's what I'll do here. I'll set it up just like that. 6 goes into 43 how many times? Yep, if you said 7, you're right. So I'll place this 7 here. 7 times 6, I know, gives me 42. And I subtract, and I have a remainder of 1. So now, when I go to my next slide, I'll have my answer in simplest form. And my answer is 7 and 1/6. That's how we add fractions and simplify our answer with like denominators. Let's take a look and see what we do with unlike denominators. You can see I still have two mixed numbers, but my denominators are different. One's a 5, one's a 10. So what I have to do is I have to find the least common multiple, which in turn will give me my least common denominator. We go to the next slide, and we already know that my least common multiple, like I said, in turn gives us our least common denominator is 10. The only thing missing are my numerators. So now I have to see what my new numerators are. 5 times what will give us 10? If you said 2, you're right. And I write that down here, so I know I have to multiply my my numerator by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And I do the same thing down here. 10 times what will give me 10? And if you said 1, you're right. And I have to do the same thing on top. So now I have my fractions with the least common denominator, and I'm ready to add. I go to my next slide, and everything is just set up perfectly. I add my whole numbers first, 8 plus 4, and that will give me 12. And I add my numerators, 4 plus 1, and that gives me 5. and my denominator stays the same. So I have my answer of 12 and 5/10. But remember, I have to simplify my fraction now. I'm going to keep the 12. Always keep the whole number. So I'll rewrite 12. And just by looking at 5/10, I know that can be reduced or simplified to 1/2. Remember, if you're unsure, always list the factors of your numerator and your denominator, find the greatest common factor, and divide the greatest common factor by the numerator and the denominator. My answer is 12 and 1/2. That's how I add fractions, mixed numbers, with like and unlike denominators. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something new.